Hey everybody, John here. How's it going? Hope everything's going well for you. You know, woodworking is an excellent hobby. It helps relieve stress. You can make a little bit of extra money off of it. You can even turn it into a full-fledged business if you want. But more importantly, it is a hobby of necessity. We made some of our tools at the beginning of this series, as you've seen, and there are other things that you need you can make. Like, for example, say someone knocks your mailbox over and your elderly mother decides to back over it and turn it into a mailbox pancake. And you don't have the money to buy one, so what are you going to do? You're going to build one. And the only reason I told you what happened to the mailbox is because I want to see if Mom actually watches this video. If you do, I love you, Mom. Okay, everybody, let's get to work and have some fun. Come on. For this project, we're going to need a cedar fence picket for the mailbox itself, and a 2x4 for the post. So we've got our cedar fence picket here, as you can see. And we have a 2x4x8 right here. Just 2x4x8 stud, construction grade is just fine. Now, time to get started. Okay guys, the first thing we're going to do is cut our 2x4 exactly in half. So, get your tape measure out and measure it. It is exactly 8 foot. Not everything you buy will be exact dimensions. Sometimes that 8 foot might be 8 foot and 1 inch or 8 foot and a half inch. So you got to always check and make sure. But this was exactly 8. So mark off your middle, which is 4 feet. Scribe your line as you normally would and make your cut. And make sure you remember to clamp your wood to your bench so that it's not flopping around everywhere, especially on a big long piece like this. You've got your piece clamped down, you've got your tick mark made, get your square out, draw your line, and you're going to cut it just like you would anything else. Always double check your measurement just to be sure. Because if you don't, it's going to be measure once, stop and cuff, and then measure and cut a new piece. So, plug your damn saw up. Always got to plug your saw up. It don't work without it for some reason. Alright, line up with your mark in your saw. Put your fence up to use as, put your square up to use as a fence and make your cut. And then check your measurement again. 4 foot even. Very good. Now you're going to want your power sander. You're going to plug it up. 80 grit sandpaper is all you should need for this part. If you don't have a power sander, you can use your sanding block. That is fine. We're going to stick on a mask and our safety glasses for sure. Always wear your PPE. Always. Check your sander. Then get to work. Right? You don't have to smooth it down for a fine finish. This is just going to be a mailbox post. What we're going to do is just smooth it down just a hair, because we're going to glue these two pieces together. Okay, guys, now that we've done our sanding, we're going to put us a line of glue on here. Put it on as heavy as you want. No such thing as too much in this scenario, I don't believe. And I know this will work because the post on that mailbox, I had already done one like this. Some glue and some brad nails in it. And it held together. It's held together for months now. It was just a little bit too short. That's the only reason I'm remaking the post. After you get your glue on, line your boards up together. Clamp it down in the middle. After you get it glued together and clamped down, get your drill and a small drill bit for pilot hole. And stick your 4 pilot holes just ever so far apart on here. If you have a brad nailer, you can use it also. Okay guys, I apologize for that. My video glitched. But after you drill your pilot holes, put your screwdriver bit in your drill, some 2.5-inch screws, and punch them down in each one of your 4 pilot holes and let your beam dry. Now it's time to work our fence picket. Put it up on your bench and clamp it down. We're going to cut the dog-eared piece off first, so just line your saw up before it needs to be to do that. Put your square down for a fence and make your cut. Okay, now that we've got the dog ears trimmed off, we're going to need a bottom and 2 side pieces at about 20 inches long. The mailbox I did have up was about 18.5, 19 inches, so I think we'll go with 20 just to be on the safe side of having enough room. And I've taught you by now how to lay out your work. So lay out 20 inches. After you cut the bottom and the sides, you're going to need 2 more 20-inch pieces. So go ahead and cut those out, and then we're going to put a bevel on for the roof. Okay guys, we're going to move on to the table saw because the bevel nut on my circular saw broke. Well, it stripped, so I can't really use it to cut a bevel right now. So we're going to move on to the table saw. This falls under the inexpensive category because I only paid $50 for this. Keep an eye on Facebook Marketplace, talk to everybody you know, and you will find a good deal. The first thing you're going to want to do is loosen your blade adjustment and move it over to 45 degrees. And then make sure your blade is just sticking up over the top of your fence picket. And then you're going to adjust your fence so that you're just barely cutting the edge off of that. You just want to catch it right about this corner, maybe a little bit further in to cut this first bevel. When you tighten up your fence, always lay your square up against it before you tighten it down and make sure that it is square. That will save you a lot of heartache later. After you get everything set up, it's time to go ahead and make your cut. Always be aware of where your fingers are. Always have you a push block of some kind. This is mine, but since we're cutting a bevel and we have room to keep our hands over here, we're not going to worry about this right now, but do wear your safety glasses. After you cut your first bevel, go ahead and get your other fence picket and cut your second bevel before you do any adjustments or measurements. That way you don't have to do it, readjust your fence but once. Also, when you're making table saw cuts, try to stand off to the side of your piece, because sometimes table saws do kick back, and when that happens you don't want to be standing directly behind it because it'll hit you. Stand off to one side or the other, that way you don't get hit. Especially if you're new to using a table saw. To cut the bevel on the other side, we're going to go about 4 3/4, make the board width about 4 3/4 inches from your long point to your other side's long point. Both long points will be on the same side, so pay attention to which way you have your wood when you're working it. Get you a mark so you'll have an idea of where to set your saw up at. After you make your mark, you're going to want to move your fence over to where your top of your blade will be coming out on your mark. After you get your fence set, take your square, make sure that your fence is square, and then lock it down. And then make your next cut. Make sure the long part of your bevel is against your fence up top instead of on the bottom. We wound up just a hair big on that one, so we're going to move our fence in just a little bit more, not much. We actually came out to 4 7/8, so we're going to move the fence in just a hair. Check for square, and do it again. After we get the measurement fine-tuned, we'll cut the bevel on the other side of our other board. Next thing we're going to do is do a test fit of our product to see how it goes together. Looks like my table saw needs to be adjusted again. It's a little bit off, but I do believe I can make that work. If your boards hang over a little bit, since this is a mailbox, it is okay. It'll help waterproof it some. Now that we see that it's going to work, it's time for assembly. Now that we've got everything test fitted together to see how it's going to work, If your boards hang over just a hair right here, that is fine. It'll help do a little bit of waterproofing on it. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Before we assemble, we're going to do some sanding and staining, and then we're going to assemble. Now then, as we're sanding, especially this being cedar, we are going to wear a mask. Just because if you do a lot of cedar sanding, it's really rough on your lungs if you don't. See, safety glasses and mask. I am wearing my PPE. Break out your sander and get started. Helps if you plug it in first. Sand it down with 80 grit and 120, and that should be enough for this project. If you wanted to go on up to about 220, you could, but I don't see a point in that. That just seems like a bit much for a mailbox. Power sander yet, you can use your sanding block. That is just fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just remember to go with the grain. Now, get the rest of it sanded and we'll be back. For this project, we will do our assembly before we finish for a couple of reasons. Number one is for the door and the back side of the house that we have to cut out. We have to be assembled to know what that's going to look like. Now, how you assemble is going to depend on how you plan on mounting it. Since I'm going to mount it straight to my post, I'm going to screw my bottom onto the post first, build the rest of it around that. If you're going to do it mounted a different way, you can build the whole house together. Okay, so get you a couple of, get you about 3 2-inch screws and your pilot hole bit for your drill that you're using. Try to center your board up on your post as much as you can. You don't have to measure it and be perfect, you just have to eyeball it. And then put your pilot holes in for however many screws you're using. And then change over to your screwdriver bit and put your screws in. our bottom on. Next, we're going to glue our roof pieces together. Lay them down even, bevel to bevel, and add you some glue. And lean it up and line it up so it's good. You can clamp this. You can pop some brad nails in its ass if you want to. Either way will be fine. You could even tape it if you have no other way to hold it together. I will use brad nails so I can keep on working and save time. The next thing we're going to do is glue the roof to the side. Might take some adjustments to get everything set in the way you want it. And after you get it where you want it, it's time to glue it on. So put some glue on the top edge of your sides. Always make sure when you get your glue up done, you wipe off the excess glue, especially if you're going to try to finish the product that you're gluing, because it does make things a tad bit difficult. And then tape it, clamp it, or brad nail it, whichever you're doing. Okay, now it's time to go ahead and mount your sides and top to your bottom. So lay it up on here, evened out where it's supposed to be, and put you some pilot holes in. I've got some screws, I think they're 1.5 inches. I'll have to measure them here when I get done doing this. Just make sure everything's even. After you put your pilot holes in, get you some 1.5 inch screws and put them in your pilot holes, and then do the same on the other side. Now that you get that done, it's time for the front and back. Figure out what's going to be your front, what's going to be your back. Hold your back up to see what size you need. It's going to be the width of your fence picket. The height from the bottom of the fence picket to where the roof starts to miter is 5 inches, and from there you're going to miter. So measure 5 inches on each side. Figure out where your pencil disappeared to this time. I don't see my pencil, but I can use my knife. All right. 5 inches up, measure it on each side just so you'll have your reference point. Make you a mark at each side. And then you're going to want to cut a 45-degree miter from this end, from these marks up to the end. Hop on your miter saw, or use your circular saw or table saw to cut that miter. And then test fit it to see how it fits, if it fits. And then repeat for the front. To put your back in, put some glue around the edges and work it in. It's going to be a tight fit, so it might be a little bit hard, but put it smooth in place. And then let your glue dry. You can also drill some pilot holes and put screws in, or brad nails if you would prefer, whichever way you want to go with what you've got available. Okay guys, after you get your front in position, if you have hinges, install them now. If you don't have hinges, you can use dowel rods or screws just right here at the bottom. Just drill you a pilot hole on each side through the side of your mailbox and the door. And then put your screws in and they will act as hinges. Oh, I can't hold on to nothing tonight. It's been a rough night, guys. Okay, here we go, back at it. Put your hinge screws in. Go slow so you don't split anything. Okay. Alright. Again, I apologize for dropping everything. Now that the screws are in, you can give the door a test and make sure they work as hinges, and they do. Now you're going to want to install what you're going to use for your door pull. Okie dokie, for a door pull, I'm going to use this little D-ring that is made to hang mirrors and picture frames and stuff with. It seems like it'll be just fine for this purpose. Comes with its own screws. Figure out about where you want it on here. And very slowly screw it in. Okay. Turn it up into position. Put your other screw in. And there you have your mailbox door. I was going to stain this, but the more I've looked at it and got to thinking about it, I want to go with more of a rustic look. So I didn't sand it as smooth as I typically would have. I think I may just leave it like this because I like the way that it looks like this. If you want to sand it down nice and smooth and stain it or paint it, you can. I just like the way this looks, so I think this is what I'm going to go with. I might put some spar urethane on it just for a little bit of added protection, but the reason I use cedar is it does really great in the rain. But this is a perfectly working mailbox. It should be just fine for this purpose. Thank you guys for joining me for this project. I hope you guys have had a great night. Hope you guys have a great day tomorrow. I will have some more projects out really soon. I'm sorry I kind of had to rush through this one, and I apologize for the sound. This new microphone didn't work out. I'll get it figured out eventually. Just bear with me. You guys keep working and stay safe.